Hey everyone, and welcome back to Wishbone Football. I am Chad, and we are here on episode 5, 1.05. This one, I am diving into some things going on at the owners' meetings, and also talking about a signing and also the draft that's coming up 3 weeks tonight. Is the first round of the NFL draft for 2026. So this week in the NFL is the owners' meetings. This is a big collection of everyone from owners, GMs, head coaches, some coordinators, some specialist coaches. This is essentially the week the league makes headway on any rule changes, schedule changes, anything that might need to be discussed about the league. Also including whether they are going to be moving to an 18 game schedule in the near future. So typically the way that it works is teams will submit requests to the league ahead of this week for the teams to review and ultimately vote on what could ultimately impact the game. To give you an example, last year in 2025, the Green Bay Packers submitted a request to the league to have the tush push banned. Everyone was talking about it from an injury or a not a football play angle. However, it ultimately did not succeed, and the tush push does live on now into the 2025 season and still in the 2026 season. But this is exactly how and why we have these annual meetings. This is when the teams and owners have their 15 seconds of fame to bring up something that should be reviewed. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because we had a funny situation come up over the last week or so with the Cleveland Browns. The Browns had made the recommendation to change the ability of trading draft picks up to 5 years instead of the current 3 years. And so what that would look like, we will use the Max Crosby trade as an example. So right now you can only trade for 3 years. So what that would have meant is if the Baltimore Ravens were sending 2 first-round draft picks to the Las Vegas Raiders, they would have had to either select 26, 27, or the 28th draft. However, with this new recommendation, the Ravens could have sent anything from 26, 27, 28, 29, or the 2030 draft. So, what has made this interesting is there was a few days of debate online and with respect to some of the major shows where this idea was gaining some traction. I do think that there is a sliver of hope for this kind of being pushed through. Everyone was talking about it. I sort of think it's funny that it was the Cleveland Browns who were the ones making this recommendation, and maybe they should be limiting how many future draft picks they can be trading away. Now, however, fast forward to Monday of this week at the owners' meetings in Arizona, and suspiciously, the Browns just sort of withdrew this recommendation. Now, there were a few GMs and coaches kind of questioned on it. Specifically, they do a coaches breakfast with one morning is all of the AFC coaches and the next morning is all of the NFC coaches and vice versa. They flip it. I don't know if it's everywhere. Either way, everyone was asked, some people were asked about it, and everyone just sort of said it's not really going to gain any traction, and they thought that it would be in the Browns' best interest to withdraw it. And I don't really like that. I mean, there's merit to it. There is a reason why it would be a good idea. And I didn't like that the Browns withdrew it, is what I'm trying to get at. It was odd, and I felt like this could have been something I could have seen gaining more traction. And the reason for this is now that the trades are being more prevalent in the NFL. And I think opening up 2 more years of draft picks might have given more flexibility to GMs trying to get deals done. Because if you think about it, 3 years is limiting. But maybe 5, you're kicking in a 5th round draft pick in 4 years. That is making a difference in a trade that you might not able to get done. Now, turning our attention to something else, another item I wanted to bring up with respect to the owners' meetings. And this is in respect to verbiage that the NFL has brought up with respect to short weeks. Currently, any team can only be involved in 2 short weeks per year, which means that the teams will play a maximum of 2 Thursday games per year. However, what they needed to figure out is everything else the NFL needed to figure out is these creation of days that appear in the schedule that says, hey, I bet you we can sell that game for $50 million. Let's call some companies, see if they're willing to do that. And we know that the NFL is going to be adding a Black Friday game in 2026. So the verbiage that the NFL has announced is that if the teams play on any Friday, these will not be considered short weeks. So I want you to think about that. Black Friday, Thanksgiving. That is the last week of November, typically every year. And I'm taking a look at the calendar from 2025. So what this meant is that Thanksgiving was November the 27th, Thursday the 27th, Black Friday was the 28th. So there were 3 games on the 27th. But there would have been, hypothetical, 1 game on the 28th for Black Friday. So all of the teams that would have played Thursday also played last Sunday. That's considered a short week. But the 2 teams that would have played on the 28th, the Friday, and the previous Sunday, that's not considered a short week. And I don't really like that. I don't think 1 day is enough. I think that any game played during the weekday, Monday through Friday, regardless of the day it is, should be considered a short week on short rest. Now, Now, this is obviously aside from Christmas, which we just happen to fall on a Thursday in 2025. But if we fast forward to November of 2026, Thanksgiving this year is going to be going to fall on the 26th, a Thursday. And Christmas, oddly enough, is going to fall on a Friday this year. So guess what the league is going to be doing? You know we're going to be playing more Christmas games again this year. The schedule has not been released, but we know that. We're now playing football on Friday. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Thursday, Friday. And Wednesdays, too, when it works for the league. But so what that means is, say for example, December the 20th, which is going to be week 16 in the NFL. You're at home playing 1 o'clock on a Sunday. Let's use the Buffalo Bills for example, because maybe the Bills play on Christmas Day. Maybe the Sunday the 20th, they are traveling to Detroit, because we do have that with the Bills schedule this year. They are at Detroit in the Dome. But then traveling back Sunday night from Detroit, not far, granted, but then you're turning around and calling Friday not a short week. Which means that the Bills can play Christmas Day. Maybe they do. Maybe they play at home Christmas Day. Which would be cool. I would be on board with that. But that means that they can still schedule them 2 nights. 2 Thursday night games in other places of the schedule. And that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of tax on the players. I honestly think that we're getting to a point where we just need to make a decision and add an 18th game already. Because I think that there is going to be more benefits to adding an 18th game. And what I mean by that is getting a second bye. So you're gonna have 2 buys, one that happens in the first 10 weeks of the year, and one that happens in the second 10 weeks of the year. And is that more beneficial than trying to play 18 games in 19 weeks? Or, I'm sorry, 17 games in 18 weeks? Think about that. Like, that's a lot of impact on the body and these football players that are already going out and giving literally everything that they have, week over week, down after down. It's incredible. So the verbiage that the NFL announced, like I said, is that the teams play on any Friday. These will not be considered short weeks. And so the example that I had written down before I got into the Christmas Day hypothetical about the Bills playing the Lions the week before and then traveling back is Black Friday. So the Bills and the Raiders play this year. So maybe the week leading into Thanksgiving, the Bills are at the Raiders in Las Vegas. Sunday, 4:25 game. Cool, right? Standalone game, almost. And then you're flying back across 2 time zones to get home at 2, 3 in the morning Eastern, and then turning around and getting ready for 3 days of practice before you're playing a Black Friday game. It just, something needs to change there. I know it's not going to happen. Me telling you that this needs to change isn't going to change anything. But the NFL does need to realize that that is silly. I think that is absolutely stupid. A Friday needs to be considered a short week. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Thursday is a short week. Friday needs to be a short week as well. So back to my Black Friday conundrum here with Las Vegas. Bills travel Thursday, practice or a walkthrough Tuesday, Wednesday, and assuming the Monday is a rest day. I really have to say that I'm not a fan of this move. I believe there is a bigger injury concern the league is choosing to gloss over. However, we know the league stance: money over everything. Now, I've got a couple of things to get you out of here on that have actually, one has come up today, the other one is 26 years old. So, today it was announced that the Las Vegas Raiders have signed Kirk Cousins to a 5-year, $172 million contract. I will give that room to breathe for you to think about that for a moment. Now, you might think this is a massive contract, but because of the guaranteed money, this contract essentially will work out to a 1-year, $11.3 million contract. And the way it's broken up is as follows. 1.3 coming from the Raiders in the way of salary for 2026. And the reason the salary is so low from the Raiders is because the Atlanta Falcons still owe Cousins 8.7 in salary for 2026 season. The final guaranteed money is a $10 million roster bonus that will be due to Cousins on the second day of the league year in 2027. However, if the Raiders do not cut Kirk Cousins by the 5th day of the 2027 league year, a 2-year, $80 million guarantee goes into place, and the Raiders have to pay him that for essentially what becomes 2027 and 2028 guaranteed contracts. Now, think about that. I mean, yeah, 2 years, $80 million. Let's think about that piece first. It's a lot of money. But this is a very good deal for both Cousins and the Raiders. The Raiders, we know, at the draft in Pittsburgh here in 3 weeks, they are going to be selecting Fernando Mendoza first overall. I can guarantee you that. But what that does is you are giving Kirk Cousins the ability to be a mentor for Fernando Mendoza, which is huge. Because we don't see this anymore. We see teams drafting a very young quarterback, bringing him in, having him work out throughout the summer, through minicamp, with a couple of other quarterbacks. Some of them may not even be veterans. That you might not even be able to call them veterans. They might actually still be guys under rookie contracts. And think about that. What kind of leadership are you giving, and what kind of goals are you setting for your young quarterback when you are not trying to give them everything that they need to succeed? And that's one thing that the Raiders, with this move, are showing that they are willing to do. Like I said, this is going to allow the Raiders to have a competent veteran to start. Fernando Mendoza in the right point Fernando Mendoza in the right direction in his rookie year. However, it also gives the Raiders a year to decide if they need to keep Cousins around. And that's a lot of money. The second half of that contract. $80 million over 2 years. I mean, but maybe paying him $40 million a year before you have to pay Mendoza. Because think about that. Let's think about the contract structure for Mendoza and Kirk Cousins. The Raiders have one of the most cap space this year. So if we are drafting Mendoza first overall this year, it's a done deal. We throw him his money. He's getting, I don't even know what the rookie's get anymore. I know it's like 65 million guaranteed over the course of their 4 years. But you're not really paying him, because if you're taking 60 million and if you're taking 60 million and dividing it over the course of 4 years, that's only a $15 million cap hit each year. And so are they better off keeping Cousins around for 3 years at a cost of $91 million to get Fernando Mendoza heading in the right direction? Because we've seen good quarterbacks sit on the bench for the first year or two and watch a veteran do it. Like, I think about Aaron Rodgers for this. Aaron Rodgers got to ride the bench watching Brett Favre sling the ball. And that can do wonders to any sort of a rookie or very young quarterback, especially at the quarterback position. So if they think that they can kind of keep Cousins around to help, the first year I get $11 million is amazing. Like, that's I think that's a steal for even to have Kirk Cousins in the building, right? Like, look at what quarterbacks are getting. Like what Kirk Cousins' second and third year could be. 2 years, $80 million. That's average quarterback pay now. So when you bring him in for $11 million for 1 year to mentor your rookie quarterback, the first overall pick that you need to hit is showing and you making that step that you are willing to do this. And it's funny because there is a Raiders motto that comes to mind perfectly about this. And that is commitment to excellence. That is a Raiders motto. And I think they're showing that. Now, keeping with the Raiders, I do have to make a small jab at them while we're talking about this, just for funny sake. In honor of the draft being 3 weeks tonight, first round, in 2000, with the 17th overall pick, the Oakland Raiders selected kicker Sebastian Janikowski out of Florida State. First round kicker. He was the first kicker to be drafted in the first round since 1970. However, he did go on to be the highest scoring Raider of all time and to date. So I think that is something you can hang your hat on. Yeah, it was a first round draft pick, and I watched a video of the selection when it was made. Mel Kiper, his hair looked the exact same. He was a whole lot younger, and they were still showing all of the crazy Raider fans who were in the crowd at the draft getting absolutely pumped up about this. But I think that's funny. I think it's it worked out, and I really would like to know 26 years later was someone they selected Janikowski at 17 in the first round. Were there other teams waiting to get to select him? I think it's definitely something that we may never see again, barring a free kicker that does not miss and can hit a 70-yarder without any question, which I think we're not too far away from. So, I want to thank everyone for tuning in again. This is episode 5 of Wishbone Football. You can find me on Twitter at WishboneFB, on Instagram at WishboneChad, and feel free to reach out. Email, DM, Twitter, ask me a question, reach out. I'm here to interact. So, again, thank you everyone for following along and listening. And again, this is Chad Wishbone. And thank you so much.